This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, what Trump must do on the Islamic threat. Backed by popular demand, Trevor Loudon, the filmmaker of the new film, The Enemies Within. Trevor, what an honor and a privilege to have you back on the Glazov Gang.
Oh, look, it's great to be on, Jamie. I very much enjoy it. So thanks for having me.
Look, we're probably so exhausted. I've been partying. You've been partying, I presume, ever since Trump's victory, correct?
Yeah, I haven't woken up, haven't been to sleep. You know, I'm starting to get a little too much blood in my alcohol stream now, though. So that could be a problem.
Yeah, sometimes there is a sweet miracle, and we will be discussing it throughout this episode because, Trevor, what we want to discuss here is the nightmare that we have been analyzing all of these years and in the last few weeks with you on the show. And now a miracle has happened that some of these horrifying, catastrophic developments and policies that we see under Obama that would have been continued under Hillary, now all of a sudden, a miracle that some of this can be turned around. So let us begin. Trevor, what is primarily on your mind as an expert on the way that the communist and Muslim Brotherhood influence penetrated our government? What's on your mind when Trump gets into office, what he can and should start doing immediately, ideally?
Well, I think the first step is to root out Muslim Brotherhood influence internally, because it's no sense sending American troops overseas to deal with ISIS or any other Muslim threat when their front groups are operating openly and legally in the United States. Now, the first thing I think President Trump should do is, by executive order, designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. Now, that doesn't have to go through Congress. That is something that he can just tell the State Department to do. Now, from that point, it will become illegal for your congressman, for your FBI, for your CIA, your State Department, etc., to work with groups like CARE, ISNA, ICNA. Well, it'll at least be very problematic for them. I believe it would be illegal. And so that would basically isolate the Muslim Brotherhood from any avenues of power in the United States. And then I think cases need to be opened up. After the Holy Land Foundation trial in 2008, the Council on American Islamic Relations was supposed to be the next target. So that should be re-looked at. Those groups should be investigated. And if cases can be brought, people should be prosecuted and jailed.
Trevor, absolutely. I mean, this is just, I have to keep using this word miraculous in a way because I'm actually in a bit of disbelief that this is actually possible because the enemy has been in the White House for so long. And we know that, for instance, in terms of what you bring up here, the Holy Land Foundation trial, 2008, CARE is an unindicted co-conspirator. They had the evidence, including the co-founder, that CARE is involved with financing Hamas. We know this also about other unindicted co-conspirators that included ISNA. Eric Holder shut that investigation and prosecution down. And now, if Trump has the right people around him, they can pick that back up and prosecute these groups. Now, but my point here is we know the left's agenda. We know Obama's agenda. Those of us that know what's up, we know why they didn't prosecute that. But one of the reasons they didn't is, Trevor, it would look awfully strange and absurd that the people you're hugging every day, the people that are advising you, are actually all of a sudden being taken out in handcuffs. It would be so embarrassing to Obama and his crowd, right?
Well, that's right, but that's exactly the reason why President Trump should do this, because there has been criminality in the White House for 8 years. There has been active participation and collusion with terrorist supporters. There have been acts of treason in the White House. So this has got to be a new broom. This has got to sweep fresh. the Muslim Brotherhood has to be driven out of the United States. Because if they are not driven out, eventually they will do so much damage, or under a new democratic administration, they will become the dominant force. And we have a chance, we have an opportunity now to sweep them out. And we must put every pressure we can on President Trump to make sure that happens.
And I mean, we're just praying that he's surrounded by good people, which we know he is. I mean, if Steve Bannon is around him, Sebastian Gorka, James Woolsey, these other people that are around him, we know that they're going to give him this great advice that you and I are talking about here. And it's just, this is so urgent because, as you demonstrate in your film, as Stephen Coughlin demonstrates in his book, Catastrophic Failure, the Muslim Brotherhood front groups, the Muslim Brotherhood itself is actually advising the administration. This is why the administration has as its policy countering violent extremism, CVE, instead of countering radical Islam. So let's move on to that. Trevor, what an emergency for Trump to come forward and frame what the war on terror is about by actually labeling our enemy.
Las Vegas was non-violent, but the embezzlement they did, the theft, the graft, the bribery, corruption, that was the real problem. And that is the real problem with the Muslim Brotherhood. They are an influence operation. They're not committing terrorist acts all the time. But what they are doing is using their influence to shut down America's defenses against terrorism, to influence politicians to turn a blind eye to their activities, and to corrupt the whole system so that basically American foreign policy and domestic policies are turned to Muslim Brotherhood advantage. Now, that's way more serious than intermittent acts of violence. So when you're looking at countering violent extremism, take the violent off the table. It's countering Muslim Brotherhood influence inside the US government, which is, of course, aiding and abetting terrorism, but that is not where the focus should be. You know, most spies don't commit acts of terrorism, but we know that spies can be hugely damaging. You know, you don't just prosecute spies who commit violence. You prosecute spies who are influencing government policy or stealing government secrets. We know the Muslim Brotherhood is involved in both, and that's where the focus needs to be.
Absolutely. Now, Trevor, let's look at immigration here for a second. We have ISIS boasting that it's infiltrated refugees in general, Syrian refugees in particular, with its ISIS terrorists. And they're flooding the West with them, and they've infiltrated with their own terrorists. And we know that the people who come from Sharia environments believe in Sharia, most of them. And the people who believe in Sharia believe that Sharia should overtake and supplant the U.S. Constitution. Now, an American that loves his country is probably should be a little bit uncomfortable with this, except Hillary and Obama and their likes. But here's the key. When Hillary hears of this happening, she wants to increase the number from 10,000 to 65,000. But people like you and I would rather do something else, right?
Yeah, well, look, I think it should be shut down entirely. You know, the United States has no obligation to commit immigration suicide. You know, look, there are two issues. Obviously, we cannot vet these immigrants, so some of them are going to commit acts of terrorism and kill Americans. That's a given. So from that ground alone, they should be excluded from the country. But I think the more important ground in the long term is, as you state, it's a constitutional issue. This is not an anti-religious thing. This is an anti-Sharia thing, which is a political system. So when I came to this country, as you probably did as well, Jamie, you had to swear that you'd never been involved in any group, communist or Nazi, that in any way would attempt to overthrow the United States Constitution. So those people were banned from coming in. So if you believe in Sharia law, you effectively believe in the overthrow of the United States Constitution. So you should be treated exactly the same as communists and Nazis who seek to come in here and be denied entry to this country. That just makes sense, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And Trevor, you see, as you well know, the left has dominated our culture for so long, has been so effective in molding the boundaries of discourse, that now what you're actually saying is labeled as quote-unquote Islamophobia, racism, etc. And the way that the left has shaped this paradigm, shaped our discourse, is that it's all about Muslim feelings. You know, like ever since Trump's victory, obviously even before, but since Trump's victory, you see it in the news. A lot of Muslims are saying that they just don't feel safe anymore. We've got to change this dialogue. It's not about Muslims feeling safe. It's about American citizens being made to feel safe by people who are connected to Sharia. So we need to change this dialogue.
Absolutely. Well, how much did we used to talk about Nazi feelings during World War II? You know, we didn't want, why, how could we offend these poor Nazis? Let's reach out to the moderate Nazis. Let's take the Nazi feelings into account before we launch a bombing raid or an attack on Normandy. That was just patently ridiculous. And it's patently ridiculous to take Muslim feelings into account when there is a large element of the Muslim religion at war with America. And the thing is, we don't know which ones they are. So therefore, in the interest of American national security, anybody who believes in Sharia law or anybody who is at risk in any way of posing a danger to American citizens should automatically be denied entry.
Well, look, and this is absolutely, and this is a conversation that has to be had because this has to be said, because the fingers pointed at us right away and saying, oh, are you trying to label all Muslims? Are you trying to hate all Muslim people, etc., etc.? And this is a crock. And there are many, many Muslim people, as we know, that go by this label of Muslim. There's many Muslim people that consider themselves Muslim or are Muslim, but they don't follow Sharia. They don't know what's in the Quran, etc., etc. And we're obviously not demonizing or dehumanizing them, obviously. However, there needs to be, by them, a renunciation of Sharia law.
Well, that's right. And see, this is where I think America's going wrong in a lot of...
And 1 second, Trevor, not just a renunciation of Sharia, but a renunciation of jihad, which the two go together. But go ahead.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, because, see, the argument against profiling in America, everybody's got to go through TSA screening. In Israel, they just profile people. And so you don't have grandmothers from Iowa being subjected to this stuff. They go after people who are a threat. Now, the argument is, well, we can't offend Muslims. It's not nice. Well, I say, basically, if we want peaceful Muslims to live in America, pressure has to be put on their community. They have to be profiled, because when Muslims are profiled as the security risk that they may be, the moderate Muslims, the non-Sharia compliant Muslims, will get very, very sick of that very quickly, and they will start turning against the radicals. Now, when they see it affecting them economically, when they see it affecting them socially. So right now, there is no real pressure on the Islamic community, the Muslim community, to turn in the radicals, to expose the radicals. So therefore, it was only when the FBI put the heat on the Italian communities back in the 50s and 60s and 70s that they started to turn against the mafia. And I think the same principle must be applied today. It is perfectly legitimate to target Muslim communities, because it's Muslim communities that harbor terrorism. When Mormons start committing suicide bombings, I will call for profiling of Mormons. When Buddhists start committing suicide bombings, I will call for the profiling of Buddhists, But that is not the case right now.
Well, absolutely. And this is where the dialogue has to shift against how the left has molded it, because they've racialized Islam. They've made it seem as though we're hating a race of people or an entire group of people. No. The issue here is that, as Robert Spencer, for instance, has documented, the texts of Islam inspire and sanction jihad. And so therefore there is a connection between Islam and Islamic terror, and this conversation has to be had, and Muslims need to step forward who renounce Sharia and jihad, and they have to do it in a very strong way. Last 30 seconds goes to you, Trevor.
Well, I think that's exactly right. We have to get over the idea that we're talking about a religion here. We're talking about a totalitarian, terrorist, pro-terrorist political philosophy. You know, Sharia law basically advocates conversion by the sword, forcing people to accept your views at the point of death. Now, that's not a religion. That's a totalitarian political philosophy. And we've opposed communism, we've opposed Nazism, we've opposed Japanese imperialism. Well, what is the problem with opposing Sharia law and Islamic totalitarianism?
Trevor, we are out of time. If I am correct, people can get your film at the enemieswithinmovie.com, right?
Yeah, enemieswithinmovie.com.
Excellent. I saw it very recently. We had a show on it. It's a tremendously powerful movie, Trevor. Thank you for making it, and thank you for joining us on the show.
Look, always a pleasure, Jamie, and let's just keep celebrating for a few more days, then get into some hard work, eh?
Absolutely, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, Trevor Loudon, you've got to see his film if you haven't already, the enemieswithinmovie.com. Go see it. And please remember, we are a fan-generated program. If you like this show and want to support us, go to jamieglazov.com, and please make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel of the Glazov Gang. We'll see you soon. Good night.